bit of a different one today. As you can see, I'm at work, which is Kilcoy Global Foods, in our test butchery shop. It's a bit echo in here, apologies in advance. But what we're gonna do is we're gonna break down this. This is called a rump, and here in Australia and New Zealand and the US, it's called a top sirloin. The reason I'm gonna break this down is that we get given these often at Christmas where I work, and people always ask me to break it down. And I think it's a great video to share, not only with my workmates, but with the world, because it's a great piece of meat if you're trying to feed a lot of people relatively economically. We're going to get a bunch of different meals out of here, and we're just going to get straight into it. This is going to be not cut at all, this video. I've got another camera here. We'll cut between the two cameras where necessary, but it's going to be one take. So I might, muck up along the way, something, who knows. But let's get stuck into it. First thing you need to do is to get it out of the packaging. So here's one here. You take it out of the packaging and you get it nice and dry. On your board. This is a butchery board. They're always white, they're not red like they are in most countries or in commercial kitchens. And the only thing I would caveat by saying, or start by saying, is that I'm not a butcher, I'm a chef, okay? So this is my interpretation of what I would do if I was to break this down at home, even though we're in a commercial setting. So yeah, I'm not a butcher, this is what I would do to break it down. And I think it works well. I think we can get a lot of different meals out of here in different cuts. So this here is your rump. Just start by looking at it. I think a rump's a great piece of meat to work on as a starting point with butchery. So the top part here, which is this piece here, this is called the rump cap, or known as the picanha, a few other names. It's a great piece of meat. I'm gonna start by getting that off first. So if you flip it over, you're gonna see a big muscle right here, and then you're gonna see a line of sinew in through here. So we're just gonna really simply even start breaking it apart just with your fingers, and we're gonna run our knife down that sinew. You see how easy that comes away. So once we've got that rump cap off, we can I can show you what we can do with it. I'm gonna try and give you recommendations for stuff all the way through this, so that we've got a bunch of different meal options. And then if you go and buy one of these rump caps, one of these rumps, you can have a go at breaking it down at home and doing your own stuff with it. So we're pretty much through here. There's a bit of fat left here, which we're going to try and keep on. We want to keep that on because then we can cut some nice steaks underneath it that still have a bit of fat on the top. So once we've seen here that we've got the flesh of the rump caps finished, we're going to run our blade down there. So as far as blades are concerned, you're going to need a boning knife, so something like this, and a bigger knife like a cook's knife like this. You want them nice and sharp. So there's our bottom. Put that one side, I'll actually put it over here, and we'll tend to this picanha, or the rump cap, really popular meat, delicious. It has quite a different texture and flavor to this part, and I think it's, it's really prized in South America especially. So all we're gonna do is we're gonna start, we don't wanna trim this down too much. There's like a nice amount of fat on this. This is what we call our Blue Diamond range from Kilcoy. Worth mentioning, this video is obviously sponsored by Kilcoy. I work for these guys, my brand ambassador, fantastic company. We've got a bunch of different brands. This is what we call our Blue Diamond brand. So then on the underside, all this is silver skin. We want to take all this off. We're going to pierce it through, and with a slight upward face, we're going to try and run that as close to that silver skin as possible, and that's what we're looking for. Almost no meat left behind. Okay, so silver skin off as much as you can. Now don't stress, if you take this off and there's heaps of meat on there, it is what it is. Don't stress too much about it. This stuff takes practice. So we're just gonna clean this all up. Once it's cleaned up, we can do a couple of things with this. You can roast this as a whole steak, no problem at all. Or sorry, more as a whole piece of meat. Works really well if you reverse sear it. So, in your smoker or your oven, like 110, 120 degrees Celsius, till you reach an internal temperature of sort of 50 degrees for kind of medium rare. Rest it, and then put it onto your really hot grill or barbecue just to get some color on the outside. It's kind of foolproof, that method, especially if you've got one of those kind of meat thermometers, the Bluetooth ones. Very hard to kind of muck up. And then from there you can just slice it and eat it for your roast, or you can cool it down and use it for sandwiches, all kinds of stuff. So you don't need to go too particular. You're just trying to get the main bits of silver skin off. The silver skin doesn't break down in cooking, unlike fat, which will render, so you definitely want to get it off. So there you go, there's a rump cap. Great piece of meat. Now, like I was saying, you can keep this as a roast. You can roast it whole. I grilled one of these the other day on my char grill here at work, completely from start to finish. Took a while, but it ended up really well. So from here, we're gonna cut this into steaks for this one, because you can just cut these into steaks, and that's how you get meat at like a Brazilian barbecue. You get these steaks that are skewered, but they make great steaks. So if you see in this camera here, what we're looking for is the cutting against the grain. So the grains are running like this. So we're gonna cut steaks like this. This is where we need our bigger knife. So when you're cutting steaks in a restaurant, you do what you call face it. So you take that piece off, so you've got a nice portion underneath it. And there's your first steak, okay? So you can see that there, that's a great steak, just like that on the barbie, no problem at all. If anything, that fat cat's getting slightly too big for me, but I'm gonna leave it. So in an Argentinian barbecue, they'll bend them over like that, skewer them, they'll put a big skewer like that, and off they go. We're just gonna cut this all into steaks. So these steaks are really great, just on the barbie. You know, not too big, that's starting to get a bit big, that fat cat. You can kind of trim this off before. I like to do it kind of as I'm going, because you can kind of control it a lot better. But yeah, this is a really tasty steak. So the goal for this is to see how many meals we can get for a family of 4 from one of these rumps. And I reckon we can probably get 6, but we'll see at the end if I meet that brief. So you get to the end bits, and these are good if you've got young kids, or kids that aren't going to eat a full adult sized steak. Give them these bits. This piece here I wouldn't bother. We're going to put this into the pile. We're going to do some kind of strip stuff as well, which we'll use for flash frying. So we'll put that there. And if you going to mince some stuff for burgers, you can keep those top bits of fat too. They're great to mince through for burgers. But the silver skin, so this stuff here, that's rubbish. Put that aside. So there you go. There's our first meal. So we've got 4 nice sized adult steaks, like big steaks, 2 small ones. So there we go, there's already more than a meal for 4 people. That's a meal for 4 adults and 2 kids. So now this piece, like I was saying, we're gonna leave this fat on, because we're gonna try and get some other rump steaks here. We'll try and get like a medallion roast out of this piece, which will tie up. To start this process, we're gonna flip it over, and we're gonna take all this silver skin off. And there's a really cool little muscle under here. I don't know the actual name of the muscle, but the butchers call it the pillow muscle, or the pillow steak. It's not a commercial steak. You never really see it on menus or in the butcher shop, because there's only 1 per rump, so it doesn't really make sense for the guys to deal with. Usually it's either just put in with left on for the rump steaks, or the butcher eats it himself. So we'll take that off and we'll save that. I'll grill that up for my lunch, I think. Nice big bit of fat there that we'll trim down, and a little bit more silver skin here. So you want to start learning to recognize the difference between silver skin and fat, and it can be tricky. So this here, I don't know if you can see that well, that's silver skin. It's pretty light silver skin. It's actually probably more of a membrane. I wouldn't stress too much about that. This stuff here that I took off before, that's straight silver skin. All this here, the hard whiter stuff, that's fat. There's no problem leaving a bit of fat on there. So talking back to this pillow steak, you can kind of see it shaping out here. So we're gonna take that out. We're gonna start here and just run our fingers up. Run a knife under there, find the other side, and you just keep following those seams until you get to the end. Now if you nick it and you start cutting into flesh, just take a second, look at it again, and try and correct where you've gone wrong. It's not too much of a big deal, and that's why the rump's quite of a good piece to start on, because the seams are really obvious. They're not too tricky. When you start getting into some other cuts, the seams can be a bit more tricky to kind of figure out. There we go, there's our pillow muscle. So we'll clean that up. This underside's fine. A little bit of sinew there that we'll take off. The bottom side usually has a big piece of silver skin on one side, so we'll clean that off. If you're not going to eat this, you can I'd still take it off, clean it up, and slice it up for using stir fries or fajitas and stuff like that. Anything flash fried. None of this stuff works well for braising, because it's a bit lean. We have to give you a second, I need to get a drink. All right, I'm back. My voice is back. So, finished cleaning up this little pillow muscle, and then yeah, like I was saying, I'll have that for lunch. Really tender muscle, like honestly eats like a fillet, like super tender. There is another, like a bit more silver skin through there, but I'm not too stressed about that. I think we'll just leave that there. So there's our little lunch. And then back to this piece, the main. We're just going to go through, trim up any more sinew under here, and then we'll break this piece down. So from this piece, I'm hoping to get, another 5 or 6 steaks, another piece of meat to roast, and then a whole bunch of strips, like beef strips that we'll use for, stir fries, fajitas, stuff like that. I think I said before, this stuff doesn't braise very well. There's not enough connective tissue. So don't try and braise it, it'll just dry out and it's not particularly nice to eat. So you want to cook it hot and fast, and ideally keep it rare if you want. If you don't want to eat rare, and there's nothing wrong with that, everyone has their own preferences and how they eat their meat. There's no right or wrong way. You still got to cook it hot and fast, otherwise it'll dry out. Pretty happy with that. So, if we look here, again, we're looking at muscle fibers, the way muscles are going. So, the muscle fibers are kind of running this way. So take your time, flip it over, have a look, see what you're working with. So I'm just going to run my blade straight down through this piece here and keep that fat cap on there. And then we'll cut that into steaks. There we go. So we've got this nice piece here that we will cut into steaks. Actually, you know what we're going to do? Because you can see here, the muscle fibers are going kind of all over the shop here. Pretty tricky so you kind of want to cut it that way. So what we're going to do is cut this straight down the middle and then cut steaks this way. There we go. So that is a nice rump steak. I reckon we'll get 6 of those with a nice piece of fat on top. I'm just going to get 3 from there. We're not going to be greedy. We will use this bit obviously for our stripping. So 3 more. 4, 5, and last one. It's a bit small, but we'll leave it as a steak. 6, 2, 4, 6. So there you go. Already from that, we've got 12 steaks, 13 steaks, some trim, and we've still got this. So this, I like to make this into a little, like a barrel roast, I call it. I don't know if that's the correct terminology. But we're just gonna run a blade down here. So we're gonna get like a nice, we'll keep that for strips, and we'll clean all this up. So we'll take all the silver skin off the top, all around, and we'll trim it up to a nice shape, and then we'll tie it up, and I'll show you how to tie it up. The reason we tie meat before we cook it, so it keeps its shape when we're cooking. The other thing you could do with this is if you had a little mincer at home, you could mince this and keep some of this fat I was talking about and make some nice burgers out of it. But you need to make sure you've got that extra fat because there's obviously very low fat in this piece of meat so far. Butcher's twine, it's not normally black, this is just fancy stuff, and to be perfectly honest, the black stuff actually doesn't tie as well, I think, as just the straight nylon stuff. But start at one end, do it here so you can see, bring it around, and we just do a simple double knot. There's no fancy knots really in butchery, well maybe there is. Once you've got your starting point, it's real simple. You take your piece of string out, you wrap it around twice, and then you go under, okay? Then you pull it tight, under, pull tight. So this works really well for a roast, but I'd do it in a pan. So I'd get a pan that can go in the oven really hot, just get really good color on all sides, and then just finish it in the oven. And it won't take long to cook like that. And then you can either take the string off and slice it and serve it like that. Also, you could probably just barbecue this whole thing. So start on a really hot barbecue. Ideally you want one, like a Weber with a lid. Seal it all sides, put the lid down and finish it. So we've got our piece that's looking like this. We're gonna roll it over and we're just gonna run it underneath each one of those. You can probably miss a couple if you really wanted to, but it's probably worth taking the time. And then when you cook it, it doesn't kind of just fall apart. It stays nice and taut. And then we're gonna have it more than enough to do some strips. So one piece of rump, and we've got, solid 12 steaks, a roast, and some strips. Tie it off at the end, up at the other notch. I'm not used to just doing one take videos and just not talking, just talking solo. My voice has gone a bit croaky. Shape it up, trim that off, and there's our little rump roast. So we have all this trim, well not necessarily trim, and all we're gonna do is really simply take all the silver skin off, all the fat off, and then we'll slice it. So Kilcoy, where I work, we're predominantly grain-fed beef, but we also have a lamb processing facility down in Victoria called Hardwicks. And then we've got a bunch of brands that we have here based out at our facility in Kilcoy. So I'm on the sunny coast now, but our main facility is out in Kilcoy. 24/7 operation, carbon neutral, really incredible piece of modern day processing. So again, you're cutting against the grain so that when you flash fry this, it's not tough and you have the fibers running one way that they're smaller. So you don't have long fibers in this piece of meat, you have short fibers. So there you go, there's some strip. So yeah, perfect for in the wok. Flash fry in the wok, you know, for beef and broccoli, for that type of kind of Asian stir fry. Perfect for heaters, stuff like that, anything that you're gonna flash fry. You could even, you know, use that to do like beef sandwiches, you know, like Philly cheese steaks. Philly cheese steaks would usually use ribeye because they kind of want the fat in there, but you could get away doing it with this. But yeah, those kind of midweek meal preps, you could even mince it and then you can make your bolognese. And you can actually just hand mince as well. You don't need a mincer, especially if you're gonna do like a bolognese sauce for a lasagna or something, and you're gonna cook it down for a couple of hours, you can just kind of hand mince it. But I'd love to know in the comments if you do a bit of home butchery at home, or if there's any other, you know, pieces of subprimals or ribeyes or sirloins you want to see me do. Ribeyes and sirloins are pretty easy. You just trim kind of the outside a little bit and then you can slice it into steaks. But I really like this one. If you're into home butchery, it's a good place to start because there's a bit of technique involved. It's not a huge cost point that if you really stuff it up, it's a huge issue. You can kind of just strip it all down like this if you needed to, but I'm pretty sure most people with some basic knife skills can at least get some good steaks off it. So we'll keep this fat as well. I'm not going to class it as a meal, but it's certainly handy stuff to have. The other thing you can do is you dice this down and render it down, and you can cook with it. Animal fat make a great cooking product. So that's a lot of beef strip there. That's easily enough for the 6 people. We've got our medallion, we've got our picanhas or our rump caps, we've got our rump steaks, our pillow muscle for lunch, and a bit of fat to render down for cooking. So what do we got? 1, 2, 3, 4 solid meals for a family of 4 or even a family of 6. A family of 4 with mum and dad to take lunch to work the next day, and you got lunch for yourself to whip up on the barbie. Thanks for watching, legends. I hope you took something from this. Bit of a different style video to what I normally do. Let me know if you want to see some more of these stuff where I break down other subprimals, lamb legs, short loins, whatever, and we'll see if we can make that happen. But I suggest you put your iPad on your kitchen bench, play the video, pause it where you need to, take your time, and it's a great way to save some money. Enjoy your beef, and we'll see you soon for another video. Peace.